So I just ran out to the garden. There are a few things like the fuchsias, lots of cuttings. This is really the time of year to take cuttings in the garden. So things like hydrangeas, fuchsias, blackcurrants, gooseberries, all of those sort of plants can be taken from cuttings at this time of year. And all you do, quite simply, is remove any flowers. So the easiest way, a stem like that you could actually make 3 cuttings from, if you wish, or just one single cutting. But we remove the flowers because they'll just take all the water away from the plants. You strip off the leaves like that. You just leave 1 or 2 leaves at the very top because that's where they're going to lose the water. Where we take off the leaves, you'll see a little bud or a little node, and that's the point at which you cut the cutting. So what we would do is there's a node just there, so you just cut the cutting there, and that piece forms 1 cutting. So that will grow a fuchsia plant. So we use a little bit of rooting powder. So a tin like that will do about 500 cuttings easy, 600 cuttings. And the trick is, don't be tempted to put them in like that. Spill a bit out on a piece of paper or whatever, and just dip the base of the cutting into the rooting powder. What that does, it stimulates the cells around here to produce roots. It's quite as simple as that. That's why it's called hormone rooting powder. There's a hormone in it. And again, you could use a tray like this. You'd fill it up. So fill up the tray and then just put the cuttings in like that. So within a tray like this, you'd fish 50, 60 cuttings of plants. Again, have the compost moist and slip the entire tray into a plastic bag again. And you can leave the cuttings out of doors, or again, if you have a greenhouse, a tunnel, that's perfect, an ideal spot for them. Because the tunnel in the greenhouse really just keeps the wind and the wetness in particular off the plants, and it keeps the temperatures that slightly a little bit higher. The idea of the plastic bag is that it stops the loss of moisture, and it creates this microclimate. For those of you that wear glasses, like me, if you walk into a hot tunnel, the glasses fog up. And that's exactly what the plastic bag does. It creates that microclimate, and it gets the cuttings to root quicker. So small cuttings like that. So from this, I can make 3 cuttings quite easily. And it's the same procedure. Just dip into the rooting powder and into the tray. And you can put them quite close together. Fill the tray up. So very quickly, they'll have rooted within about a 6 or 8 week period. By early spring, they'll actually look just like that. There'll be new growth coming on them. And then you can take them out, put them into pots, put them out into the garden if you wish, and grow them up. Same thing applies to blackburns. You've got to grow blackburns in the garden. With these and with plants like hedging, if you want to try your own hedging plants this time of year, you take longer cuttings. So this is laurel. That's a 2-year-old plant of laurel. You take the cuttings like so. Same procedure again, just strip off all the leaves. Alright, create a mess it is. So again, you just remove the growing point, just prune that out, and then you can leave the cutting as long as this if you wish, or you could make 2 or 3 cuttings if you want from the one piece. But generally blackburns, it's easy to get plenty of wood. Again, at a node, you just cut it at a node, like that. Dip it into the rooting powder. Now it's a bit big for the tray, so the place for this is to put it out in the garden. So dig a little trench in the garden, in the veg garden or in the raised bed or whatever. Put some sand into the trench. So dig the trench about that depth, put some sand into the bottom of the trench, and then stick your cutting into the trench, and you can put them again side by side. So between me and you, we'll fit 30, 40 plants, no problem. Leave them there for the winter. Because you've cut the top off, what will happen is the plant will start to produce lots of side shoots. It'll become bushy like this. And once you see the new growth coming in April, early May, you can dig the plants up and have them somewhere else. Right? So, and that applies to all cuttings really, things like this spotted laurel. Again, a branch like that, you could take small cuttings like this one, a small piece like that, and again, remove all the leaves because just leave a leaf right at the top, because that's where it's going to lose its water. And again, if they're big leaves, you can actually just cut them in half like that. Simple as that, and just maybe cut it there. Rooting powder. A small cutting like that, this is probably a little bit shallow, but something about that sort of depth would be ideal. The cutting is sitting like that. And again, just the rooting powder. So a small bit of powder like that will do loads and loads of cuttings. Any questions on? Things like gooseberries you could do. A little bit trickier because they're thorny, so you just have to be that little bit more careful. But again, it's the same procedure really. If If you wore a glove maybe and just pull off the leaves and thorns off it, and it's the same thing again, just take out the top of the shoot. And that size of cutting is ideal, about 1 foot long. Just cut it there at a note. Right, so cuttings in general, hydrangeas, laurel, if we were doing the laurel, again you take it to about there, and then you take out the growing point, and again, same procedure, just take off the leaves. The softer the cuttings, you just need to be a little bit more careful taking off the leaves, sometimes the branch will break. But that's ideal.
Something like camellia.
Well, camellias are more tricky.
Yeah.
And they tend to, if you can get you can get the seed trays with a heated cable. They're a heated, what are they called? A heated propagator is the word, that's it. And basically what that does, it provides bottom heat, constant bottom heat, like making wine. You know, the mats that sit under the jar of wine. It's the same idea. So there's a heated cable. So for more tender cuttings like rhododendrons, camellias, the more expensive plants that you buy, they need this kind of bottom heat to actually get them to germinate. Now you can actually sow all that I mentioned, all the seeds and so on, in that type of tray, and they'll come on faster, and you tend to get a more even germination because you just have this constant temperature. Whereas a tray like this, naturally enough, the temperature is going to fluctuate. So that's their thermostatic controls. So they bring it up to a certain temperature, and then it cuts out and heats up again. So for camellias, and again with camellias is the plant that produces the lovely flowers like a rose in February, March, April, that time of year. And you take the cuttings very small. So maybe 4 or 5 inch cuttings, and just leave 1 leaf. And if you want 10 plants, you take maybe 20 cuttings, because there will be some failures with them. But for the majority of plants in your garden, like roses, hedging, fruit trees, spotted laurel, fuchsia, all of those, they're very simple cuttings this time of year. And they'll root over the winter period, and they're ready for planting out then come the spring. And for most of them, you can root them out of doors. Don't just stick them into soil. They like a gritty mixture, so something like sand or peat mixed through the soil helps to root them easier or faster.